you're not sitting next to a person, I'd like you to get next to someone. I'd like you to get out of your seat and move next to someone. All right, great. Thank you for indulging me. I want you to be a little uncomfortable. Because what I'm talking about next, religious diversity, is a little uncomfortable, but only a little bit. And that's not the end goal. Before I start going into this topic, my name is Mark NeCamp. Hi, everyone. I want to thank everyone who brought me here. I really appreciate it, and my lovely wife, Jessica. I'd like you all to take a breath with me. Breathing in, breathing out. Close your eyes, or keep them open if you're afraid of what this man is about to say. Take another breath with me, please. Breathing in, breathing out. And as you breathe in and out, just be aware of your body. Be aware of the people next to you. Be aware of the invisible connections of matter and spirit that tie you together. The reason I'm up here today is I've had a very odd faith journey. I grew up in the south side of Chicago. This is a church I went to as a kid. I was baptized and confirmed there at St. Clotilde. Now, this church is very fascinating if you study religion, because this Catholic church is 90% African American, which is a little odd for a Catholic denomination. And I have to tell you, if you, on a Sunday morning, if you heard the choir there, it would rival any Baptist church choir. They would really bring it, folks. The other thing about this church is a handful of the people there were practitioners of Santeria. Now, Santeria is a syncretic religion. Anyone here know what Santeria is? All right, awesome. Santeria is a syncretic religion. It is a mixture of African polytheism brought over from the slaves and a mixture of veneration of the Catholic saints. This makes it more of an underground religion, and the little old church ladies that I saw with their brightly colored beads that were connected to different saints and different polytheistic gods didn't talk much about this. It's something I found out later from different teachers I had over the years. I've also had about 3 years of very intense Buddhist training. I was almost a Hindu renunciate. I've had many interesting spiritual teachers, everything from a retired university professor who was an Episcopalian minister to a blind astrologer. It's been a weird journey, folks, but a fun one. We live in a changing world, and of course, looking at the amount of diversity we have in this audience and on the internet. Has anyone here heard of the internet? Okay, just checking. We're all very interconnected, more than we've ever been as a society. In fact, almost the entire wealth of human history and human knowledge is only a few keystrokes away. That's a miracle. Just want you to revel at how amazing that is. With this interconnectivity comes an awareness of the different types of people, philosophies, socioeconomic backgrounds. This also leads us to different interdisciplinary approaches. We can look at religion through the lens of anthropology or psychology. We can look at psychology through neuroscience or even religion. It's a very fascinating time, and the more that we can look at life and experience through these different lenses, the more we can learn. The more we can get out of our points of view that might be a little comfortable and find out, well, what we don't know and start asking some different questions. With diversity, there is also conflict. This is where we can be uncomfortable. There's been a rash of interreligious fighting, religious extremism, terror on a global level. And I'll be honest, it kind of scares me a little bit. I'm glad I'm not in a country where when I go to the airport, there's not soldiers with AK-47s, but how far away are we from that? We are in a bit of a religious crisis in the sense that it is fundamental to our survival as a species to learn how to get along. It is fundamental. This is not a choice. We need to learn how to get together. Of course, we have attacks like the Charlie Hebdo attacks in France, Boko Haram, with thousands on thousands of civilians killed, many young girls abducted. Of course, beheadings and terrorism of ISIS or ISIL. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, isn't it, folks? Can talk about the Hindu-Muslim violence at Uttar Pradesh. If anyone here from England or more international flair, of course, you know about the Guy Fawkes and the gunpowder plot of 1605. That's Protestant versus Catholic conflicts. Of course, the Middle East, Israeli-Palestinian conflicts. The history of the independence of India and Pakistan is rife with conflict between Muslims and Hindus. And of course, I can't neglect to think about the Crusades. This is a theme in human history. This isn't just something from current events. Now, seeing that we have to take a look at religion, we have to find some sort of base point on which to analyze these things and ask some questions, and of course, learn how we can find sort of lasting peace with religions. I'd like to go in two different lenses here: religious exclusivism and religious pluralism. Now, with religious exclusivism, we have, of course, the belief that one particular religion is true. Just your religion. Not mine, just yours. And I'm not here to judge religious exclusivity versus pluralism. That's not my job here. My job is just to illustrate a couple of topics. Now, with religious exclusivism, religion is not just about the beliefs of a group of people. It's a very political thing. If we can go back to prehistory and think about how we evolved as societies and grouped each other in civilization, we can talk about how we started as tribes. Anyone here ever read the Old Testament? I love the Old Testament, man. I don't want to look at some of the shows on cable. I can just read the Old Testament. Never will you find such a combination of epic struggle, violence. Oh, it's great stuff. Now, of course, if anyone who's familiar with these topics at all, there is a lot of warfare. There's a lot of bloodshed. You cannot go over the Old Testament without one tribe slaughtering another. It's impossible. This is part of human history. If my tribe meets your tribe, and I don't know who you are, and I don't know what God you worship, well, then I'm automatically going to be in a conflict for survival. Because in that world where resources are scarce, if you're not someone I can trust very quickly, then I'm going to have to kill you. Because it's not just about me. It's about my family and the rest of my tribe. This is a healthy instinct in our development as biological creatures and of civilization, the survival instinct. We are still animals, folks. That survival instinct, of course, can mutate into extreme violence when threatened. Once again, this is a natural instinct, but this also illustrates where some of this religious extremism comes from. It comes from that very base need. Now, as we've gone from, of course, third world to first world conditions, our survival instincts mutate, and our needs become less physical and more emotional and psychological, and of course, spiritual. Then our survival instinct isn't about just being in a nice place that's warm or having nice clothes. It turns into identity and the survival of ourselves. This is why when we experience differences, there might be that conflict. Wait, who are you? There's this kind of schism psychologically. However, I'd invite you that from a religious exclusivist point of view, peace can happen because by looking at someone else's religion, if we come from a respectful place, we can compare and contrast our views. We can say, well, I don't worship God in that way, but what are they trying to do? What's their goal? How are they accomplishing it? Is that something I can take apart analytically and maybe add to what I'm doing? Seeing something different doesn't have to be a source of conflict, but a source of re-examining the self, of turning inward, of reflecting, and coming to a greater place of integrity and self-esteem. On the flip side of this, with religious pluralism, anyone here do yoga? Anyone here heard of yoga? Okay, excellent. Well, yoga is not a Christian philosophy. This comes from the East. This is more of a Hindu and mystical thing. Now, it's interesting, of course, we live in a predominantly Christian country. So we have kind of this weird thing. I'm in a predominantly Christian country, and a lot of people are following a Hindu mysticism. What's going on here? Well, we're living in a world of more connectivity, of more diversity. This means that we see something new that is beneficial, we can try to add it to what we're doing. In religious pluralism, multiple religions can be true. Anyone hear the story of the blind man, or the three blind men and the teacher? Anyone know this one? It's kind of like a religious joke. Stop me if you heard this one. There was once a saint, and being a saintly man, he liked to teach people. Just kind of wandered the earth, taught. And he came across three blind men. And he brought them to an elephant. Takes the first blind man. Go and touch the elephant. And he brings him right to his tail. He says, what do you feel? He says, oh, I feel a rope. Okay. Takes a second blind man. Brings him to his ear. What do you feel? Well, I feel the leaf of a palm tree, of course. Why are you asking me such a stupid question? Goes to the third blind man. Brings him to the trunk of the elephant. What do you feel? Oh my God, you've got this python. Why are you trying to kill me? 3 points of view, one elephant. This is a metaphor for our experience with the unseen, with the divine. In a religious pluralist point of view, we're feeling different parts of the elephant and acknowledging that perhaps I'm only feeling one part and other people will be feeling another. Religious pluralism also comes across in many different interesting ways, such as the Baha'i faith, that all religions are part of successive revelation, and that all religions are connected. There's also syncretic traditions, like I was speaking of with Santeria, and various neo-pagan faiths. And then, of course, we have our friends who worship yoga, who do yoga and go to church. Well, this is kind of an interesting mix, and this is, I think, where a lot of our future and how we look at religion is going, because we're really having an eclectic spirituality, and it's not just about participation in church, but it goes into personal responsibility on how we look at and analyze and evaluate different faiths and integrate them into who we are for our own personal betterment. There is this wonderful mix and blend between the religious communities we're part of and that exist, the orthodoxy, and more of our direct connection with the divine. Now, for religious diversity, to understand these different religions, we have to acknowledge that at one point, someone was the first of that religion. There had to be a first Muslim, a first Christian, a first Hindu. These people had a direct and mystical experience that inspired them to found those religions or those philosophies. Since we are at a place where church attendance has gone down dramatically, where religious communities and our attendance and such has gone down quite a bit, the search for these answers has not disappeared. The search for meaning is part of who we are at a fundamental level, which means we have a greater responsibility to be aware of spirituality, integrate it into our lives. This means that we effectively, excuse me, become the priest or priestess of our own religions. We're all mystics. At the same time, we're all looking at the orthodox religions, gaining inspiration and guidance. I'm not trying to say that we should get rid of the churches by any stretch. I'm just here to illustrate that there is this dynamic between the religious institutions and the personal search for meaning that is going on a regular basis. Once again, we have this sort of the parishioner following the church, being that your experience listening to me is different than your experience listening to me. The way you touch the elephant is different from the way you touch the elephant. Acknowledging that we're seeing different things and are limited by our perceptions and the way that we analyze data. The experience of the parishioner in the pew is different from person to person. Now, I'm going to give you guys some homework because we're at a university. So I'm kind of have a bit of a moral obligation as such, correct? Okay. Part of your spirituality, whether you acknowledge it or not, follows a fundamental pattern. And if we take all the world's religions and acts of worship side by side, we'll find some very remarkable differences. And that's where it gets interesting. Because almost every religion prays. There is this connection to the divine. And prayer, of course, could be in terms of words, music, anything like that. Meditation, listening to the divine and receiving that message back. But also inspiration, how we're excited and we connect. It's also introspection, how we look at things, be inspired, and inspire others. Ritual and community, of course, are fundamental things that happen in part of any religious thing. I know I'm running out of time, so I want to go just one last point on religious diversity and how we can take a look at these religions, these different philosophies, and go into a more respectful place. I have what I call the acceptance triangle. And it's that when we're in dialogue, it's not just about looking at people in sense of the religion they follow, but on a personal level. So at this point, I'd like you to reach across the person next to you and hold their hand. And this is a stranger in some cases. It's connecting. Connecting is uncomfortable sometimes, but we have a fundamental need for intimacy, for connecting. Once again, back in prehistory as a tribe, but those instincts haven't gone away, so we have to find ways to connect in more thoughtful ways. So we connect on our similarities. We can share and admire the differences. So look at the person next to you. Look at the people around you. See how they're different, but find something to admire about them. And then integrate. Integrate what you've learned, what you feel, and because you're transformed by this touching. You can stop holding hands now. Lastly, I offer, be enriched by our differences and supportive of our similarities. And look at every opportunity of seeing something diverse and different as a way to center oneself, grow, and learn. And perhaps if we take the responsibility of ourselves in this faith journey, we can bring the sense of diversity, acceptance, and change to others. Thank you very much.